Hi, I'm Don from DonDronesOn. I stumbled on the NAV Canada 2021 Annual Report the other day and was very disturbed by two things. First, and most importantly, some very astonishing statements about the NAV Drone App and a mention of upcoming NAV Canada drone user fees. The second disturbing thing? The fact that I'm looking at NAV Canada annual reports. Well, let's get into this stuff, at least the first item. I think before we go too far, it's important for all of us to understand at least a little bit about what NAV Canada is and isn't. It's not a government agency, and it's not part of Transport Canada either. NAV Canada is what they call a not-for-profit corporation. It was established in 1996 when Transport Canada decided to privatize the operation of Canada's civil air navigation system. At the time, NAV Canada bought the rights to this operation for $1.5 billion, but they're still controlled by an act of Parliament called the Civil Air Navigation Services Commercialization Act, or ANC for short. This act specifies how NAV Canada will be structured and key elements of the services it can provide. NAV Canada is funded entirely through customer fees, such as airport and manned aircraft charges. It has no shareholders and receives no government money. Now, as you can imagine, the pandemic has hit NAV Canada pretty hard due to the reduced air traffic. So it is now not only not for profit, but also very much in the red. So what's all this got to do with drones and annual reports? Well, it's quite interesting. In 2019, the NAV Canada Annual Report mentioned drones only once. But that reference was to drones being one of the top 8 risks to aircraft operational safety. Really? In the top 8? Other than the fact that this was right on the heels of the Gatwick incident, which of course still hasn't been proven to even be a drone, this seems massively over the top. Remember, in 2019, there had been only one documented interaction between a drone and manned aircraft in Canada, ever. Since then, 2 more, both of which were police drones striking aircraft. So to me, identifying drones as one of the top risks, well, it's either fear-mongering or perhaps laying the groundwork for someone's pet project. And lo and behold, in 2020, NAV Canada announced they had entered into a strategic agreement with Belgium's Unifly company to develop a system for managing drones in Canada's airspace. And now we come to the 2021 annual report, the one that I found by fluke. Suddenly, drones are the hot topic. They're mentioned in the President and CEO's message, in the service delivery update, and finally in the message from the NAV Canada Advisory Committee. Everyone seems to be tripping over each other to tout the wonderful introduction of NAV Drone. And remember, this is the annual report for all of NAV Canada, a billion-dollar company managing one of the largest regions of airspace in the world with a massively sophisticated network of facilities, technology, and expertise across the country. All this focus on drones, other than perhaps as a tactic to divert attention from all the red ink, seems wildly out of proportion. The NAV Canada Advisory Committee's commentary in the annual report was the main piece that caught my attention. The Advisory Committee is a cross-industry group of 20 individuals with the mandate to review and advise the Board of Directors on strategic elements of their business. Their positions are voluntary and unpaid. They're not NAV Canada employees. The article, written by the chair of the Advisory Council, David Deere, included 2 key messages related to drones. Firstly, this absolutely astonishing and hilarious description of the NAV Drone app. The recently developed NAV Canada drone application is an exceptionally impressive tool that has clearly taken significant time, expertise, and resources to develop. Well, that line made me laugh, but the next bit of the article was more concerning. David went on to describe the 4 areas the Council will be focusing on going forward from a drone perspective. First, drone safety and security. Okay. Second, integration of RTM systems and traditional air traffic in NAV Canada's airspace. Well, for me, a bit weird to talk about integration rather than separation, but okay. Third, a bunch of stuff that sounds suspiciously like remote ID, which again is a bit worrisome, but of course they should be taking a position on this topic. And finally, the killer, NAV Canada drone user and service fees. Yep, you heard it. NAV Canada drone fees, not to be confused with the fees Transport Canada already collects, exam fees, pilot certification fees, and drone registration fees, and all the new fees Transport Canada is proposing, like for SFOCs. These NAV Canada fees would be over and above those, presumably for services like getting approval to fly in controlled airspace through their exceptionally impressive NAV Drone App. I decided to get to the bottom of this. The catch was that 2021 happened to be the final year for David Deere as head of the council. So I emailed the new chair, Brett Patterson, and as a courtesy, copied David since he was the author of the article. In the email, I introduced myself, then asked 3 questions. 1. Have you ever used the NAV Drone app? If so, I would be astounded if you used the expression exceptionally impressive. Less surprising would be appallingly bad, or did anyone even test this thing? I suggested they check the ratings on the App Store and Play Store, perhaps compare them to Drone Pilot Canada's ratings, and mentioned that I had tried engaging with NAV Canada to provide an API. Second, I asked them to elaborate on these drone user fees and asked if they were available to discuss these items. Simple, straightforward, and direct. I promptly received a reply from David Deere, the author of the article in the annual report, and he agreed to get together for a chat on Zoom. He did request that the discussion not be recorded, and I respected his request. And remember, David was chair of the advisory council as an unpaid volunteer. He doesn't work for NAV Canada. His day job is as a senior technical standards pilot for WestJet. David explained that drones had become a regular agenda item at advisory council meetings. The exceptionally impressive comment about the NAV Drone app was based upon a presentation made to the committee and not based on actual hands-on use. And he freely admitted that he himself does not fly a drone, and while some members of the council may fly drones, that's not their area of expertise. It reminds me of an old cartoon from decades ago. I wish I could have found it. It first showed some poor engineer telling his manager that their new product was absolute shit. But by the time the report made it up the management chain to the president, the execs were happily discussing the business case for their new line of fertilizer. This certainly sounds like what happened here. The advisory council was fed a load of bull. Well, in my opinion anyways. Since then, David has played around a bit with NAV Drone, had a look at some of its online reviews, and is also now aware of alternatives available to drone pilots, notably Drone Pilot Canada. While he was careful with his words, his opinion of NAV Drone no longer sounded quite as positive. And he also agreed that from a safety perspective, it made sense to make it as easy as possible for drone pilots to understand the airspace and to be able to submit controlled airspace requests through more user-friendly tools, such as Drone Pilot Canada. Moving on to the subject of potential drone fees was interesting. Apparently, the amount of resources focused on drones is increasing within the company and becoming a larger piece of the overall pie. This expansion comes at the expense of other programs underway at NAV Canada, improving navigation systems, radar, and so on. Crucial stuff for manned aircraft. One of the roles of the Advisory Council is in fact to provide the Board of Directors their view on whether this kind of direction makes sense. So David explained if they decide it does make sense to spend more and more money on drone-related activities, then the Advisory Council may recommend that drone user fees be considered, rather than the funding coming from the rest of their aviation business. He emphasized that, yeah, drone service fees are certainly a topic of discussion, but are not yet a recommendation the Advisory Council is making to the Board of Directors. In fact, the bigger question is whether the growing percentage of drone-related work is justified at the expense of perhaps higher priority manned aircraft programs. My opinion, for what it's worth, NAV Canada, like Transport Canada, is going way overboard on this drone stuff, like the NAV Drone App. Yes, there is work to be done, like the underlying automation of the authorization requests, and ensuring bigger things, larger drones or drones operating beyond VLOS, are operating safely. But otherwise, this is excessive nonsense and must not be allowed to impact recreational and light commercial operators. Anyways, I thought all of us drone pilots in Canada needed to hear what was going on in the upper echelons of NAV Canada, what they think of the NAV drone thing, and how they're considering remote ID and drone fees going forward. I do want to thank David Deere for the time he spent discussing these topics with me, and I'm really glad I had the chance to hear his perspectives. Thanks for watching. Safe and happy flying.